Hi, this is Taylor Burrowes. I'm checking in from Da Nang, Vietnam. I'm going to see how this connection works down here. I'm in the lobby area of my lovely Airbnb. It's my favorite apartment so far in Vietnam. So we're only here for 4 more days. We're leaving on Friday to Hanoi, but just wanted to check in, and I wanted to talk about this concept of restlessness. I understand restlessness a bit differently than you might be able to look up on Wikipedia. So in regards to psychology, for those of you that don't know, I have been a professionally trained mental health counselor, marriage and family therapist, and I transitioned into doing online coaching for dating and relationships and life stuff as well. Generally, as a mental health professional, it allows me to have that expertise. I've worked for 14 years with clients. So in regards to loneliness, that's a really common complaint that a lot of people have, whether they're single or even sometimes when they're in relationships, and they still tend to feel lonely for some reason. So the way that I reframe loneliness is by calling it, hello, how are you, Ashley? I hope you're doing better and you're feeling better since the hospital. I heard a little bit about it, but I'll reach out to you and see how things are going. So when people are feeling restless, they might be feeling distractible, they might be feeling anxious. Glad to hear that. Loneliness can feel overwhelming, but really, if you look at it as a form of anxiety because you're not really content with your life as you've created it, then it might be a little bit easier to feel empowered and to take that agency and the initiative to do something about it. So loneliness is not just about being alone, but about being unhappy, about being discontent with the life that you have. If you are, basically creating a life that you are engaged in, that you're enthusiastic about, you're not going to feel lonely. So it's another way of looking at it so that you can avoid just sort of slipping into relationships because of that loneliness. And you recognize that, well, first of all, like if you just get into a relationship because you're feeling lonely, the likelihood is that it's not going to end well. You'll probably be codependent, you'll probably be very needy or clingy in a bad way, and that's not going to be a healthy relationship. So going into one just in order to feel like you're not alone and you have somebody there, a companion, it's not a good reason to get into a relationship. I hope that's common sense, but I think a lot of people are motivated to do that, to get out there and sort of interact with people when they're feeling lonely. And I understand doing social things, but do social things, go out, date, go out and meet people, interact with strangers with an outcome independence, not with a goal in mind, like maybe for men it might be like hooking up or sex, or for women it might be that too. But usually their goal is about sort of grabbing onto someone and keeping them around in a form of a relationship. So that is having an expectation of an outcome. So that's outcome dependence. And if you go and you socialize, you mingle, you should not be worrying about what happens at the end of this interaction of meeting someone new, but more about having an experience and, enjoying it. And if it's not enjoyable, taking yourself out of it and finding something else that you can do. So when you're going into those circumstances, whatever, if it's a gathering, a get-together, you're just out, you go for a walkabout in your neighborhood, if you've got like cafes and restaurants and bars, or if there's a museum or some kind of an event that you can go and mingle with people, or if you're on a university, there's lots of activities, or just hanging around like a park or a university type of setting can be a great way of just running into people and striking up conversations. But don't feel like it has to be something specific. You can just interact with anybody anywhere at all times, whether you're in the elevator, and whether you're at the grocery store. And when you do that, you kind of get into the habit of just engaging and being more transparent, being pleasant, knowing how to sort of keep the conversation flowing, being interested in the person and curious about what's going on with their life. And that will help you feel less lonely, because there are lots of people around in the world that typically, you know, you kind of block out and tune out. So if you do pay attention, there's a lot of things happening. It's only if you're kind of locking yourself away and shutting the world out that you can start to feel very isolated. So you don't want to do that. And again, think about what's happening internally in your mind when you're feeling overwhelmed and unhappy, discontent. It's almost like there's a gap. You know, like that loneliness is a feeling of being in a hole in a way, like there's a void that you're existing in and it doesn't feel good. So the more that you're able to fill your life and fill your alone time with activities, or it could be simple things like domestic things or reading or writing or getting on online and doing vlogs or researching things that interest you so that you can look forward to doing something. It could be learning a new skill, a hobby, or like actually getting out of the house and getting out in nature and participating in life. So I don't think there were any specific questions from anybody yet, other than a few. Let me try to block this person. Report comment. Okay. I couldn't block them. Hey doctor, hi. Nice to see everybody on here. I know it's late night on a Monday night, right? It's Tuesday morning over here in Vietnam. It's about noon. So I'm usually between like 12 to 14 hours ahead of you guys in the States or Canada, that part of the world. But if anybody has a question about restlessness, what that is, what that means, or how to deal with loneliness, I've had a lot of questions about that lately, specific to the other side of the lobby area in this building, specific to dating. So feeling lonely and feeling like that pressures them to get out there and kind of put themselves in bad situations. So really encouraging people to reinforce themselves individually, so that you have a lot of stuff going on in your life, that you don't feel that pressure to just sort of lower your standards and accept people that are not healthy for you. But ultimately, you're not healthy for other people if you're in that frame of mind, right? So let's see. It's a state of mind, absolutely. How to determine if what you're feeling is loneliness. Well, I mean, you can call it loneliness, you know, feeling alone, feeling isolated, feeling even strange, weird, displaced. Another way of looking at it is like you're on the outside, and so feeling separate and different from other people, or, I think feeling different from the mainstream is probably a good thing, but that feeling inside is going to make you feel a little like an alien. And yes, and it should be enjoyable to spend time alone. Not that you have to do it all the time, but there can be a nice balance. And having a small select circle is really key, so that you know that your personalities line up. Vietnam is great. Yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's nice to compare all the different cities. I started in Saigon and went up the coast to Nha Trang, and now I'm in Da Nang and going to Hanoi on Friday. So this is a beautiful apartment that we're in. We went for a long walkabout for like 3 hours yesterday, so that was nice. The beach looks amazing, so I'm excited to go check out the beach. But if you want to, some people like to be alone and they don't feel lonely, so it is a state of mind. But being able to sort of check in with your feelings when you are not feeling healthy, when you're not feeling happy or content and fulfilled, and being able to identify it as loneliness really just means that you're not comfortable with your own company, if that makes sense, right? So loneliness is really about your relationship to yourself. And if it's not a good one, if it's not healthy, then that's when it's a big red flag and a sign for you to make some changes, for you to get out there and maybe ask for help, ask for support. So someone's asking, can you be my therapist? Seriously speaking, I work with people online as an online coach, so you can always reach out to me and set up the free 15-minute discovery call if you'd like to talk more, but I don't know if that was a serious inquiry. Is seeking interactions with the intent of trying to get a date a bad way to go rather than just seeing what happens? I encourage people to just really bring it, like being enthusiastic about your life, enjoy what you're doing, have a mission, have a purpose, have the things that you do, routinely, daily. And then create space for you to do nothing or go just wander around in nature and with life. And in those moments, you should be carrying that energy with you that's content and fulfilled and expansive and enthusiastic. So other people are going to feel it, and you're going to be open and engaged with people. And so that's going to be enlivening for them, and they're going to be attracted to that. And so when you interact with them, they're going to have a good time. You might get along really well and want to spend more time together. So then, if that happens, it's very natural and normal to, if it's opposite sex, to then maybe get numbers and going on a date. But if you're kind of focused on, this is my goal, again, being outcome dependent, then it can feel a little bit forced and it can make people feel uncomfortable. And so when that happens, it might be that you get the number that day, but it might not actually pan out in the long run. But there are lots of people that get out there and intend to ask someone on a date, sort of, find someone that they're attracted to and engage with them in order to sort of meet that goal, and it works out well for them. So that's one strategy of doing it, but that's not the way that I think works best, because it's a sense of needing that outcome, needing to have the date in order to be happy. And so, it's not necessary. What it is, it's about practice. And so having the opportunity to practice that social engagement and those social skills is more important than how many dates have you had in a week or in a month. If you think about it, that's a sense of confidence, is not caring how the outcome turns out, but just really sort of, being an awesome person and being memorable, and someone leaving that situation really, sort of spellbound by that. And, you're not needing them to have that number or go out with them again to have that validation. But absolutely, that can work too. So winding up here, any other questions before I close out? You're sideways for some reason. That's too bad. I don't know why I'm sideways, but maybe it's on your phone. I don't know. Is that everybody else seeing me sideways as well? Usually they come out the proper way when I do it landscape. But anyway, any other questions? No? Okay, good. Yeah, the technology can be tricky sometimes, but as long as you can hear me well, you can see me well, don't get a crick in your neck and do that. How can I be supportive for a friend who's just coming out of a divorce? Well, that's really nice of you to want to support him and do it in a healthy way, not just sort of feed him alcohol and get him laid every night. It's definitely important for him to know that there are other women out there, or vice versa if it's the other gender. One sec, the landlords are just leaving on their scooter. So yeah, you want to make sure that they know that there are other people out there. So really just being there to support them by listening, by letting them vent a little bit, and accepting that they might be awkward and they might be preoccupied and not really present when you're with them. So it's really great to have other things going on sometimes, like if you're, it's not just one-on-one or a couple of people where they feel pressured to hold a conversation when their mind's kind of somewhere else. You're welcome. Thank you. So if there's a gathering and they're there, you can kind of, check on them or introduce them to people, but hopefully they'll feel like they won't be pressured to be the center of attention or be the most engaging, interesting person, because, they're not going to have a whole bunch to say. But, instead of just asking people, like it's with any loss or a sense of grief, you don't want to sort of say, if you need me, let me know. They're not probably going to reach out. So you want to just know them well enough or ask them what their plans are for the day. And if they say nothing, then you can be like, well, I'm going to pick you up around this time and take you to lunch or take you on a drive or something like that, so that you're taking the initiative, because often after a loss or a significant breakup, like a divorce, people might just disengage from things. They might have a sense of depression. And so that's the best way to handle it, is to just sort of give them what they need, rather than expecting them to tell you what they need. And food is always a great way to show support. And I would say not necessarily trying to make them talk about their feelings, but doing things with them. So whether it's going to the gym or going for a walk or any kind of active thing that they can get out of their heads and start to do something tangible and physical, because when you engage that physicality, it can really shift your emotions, right? Your mood's going to change, your hormones are going to shift, and that's going to really help to alleviate some of those negative emotional symptoms. So that's definitely something I would suggest you do. But I think it's great that you're there and you want to help, because it can be very difficult. Going through a divorce, so it takes time. But any other questions? You're welcome. Thanks for asking. It can be tricky. A lot of loneliness can be experienced after divorce as well, because that level of intimacy you get used to it, that attachment. Should you approach dating with goals of something more, or should you just kind of see what happens? Yeah, I was kind of answering that question. So I don't think it's about being wishy-washy. You shouldn't be wishy-washy. You should know what you want about your life, but trying to force it into that outcome is not going to feel natural and comfortable. Whenever you're talking to someone, if you want it to go well, the worst thing to do is to talk too much, right? Like, you want to know about them. You want to be curious about what's, important to them or what their life is like. And sometimes less is more. So trying to force it in a particular direction can be a bit intrusive. And so I find, and as a woman when I was single, that it was much easier to have a conversation with someone when you didn't feel like they were trying to lead you down that direction. And it could be a lot more enjoyable. And honestly, like, the fact that you don't get a number, but you had a really enjoyable conversation versus you had a really sort of awkward, uncomfortable, coerced conversation and ended up with a phone number is really not a measure of success. So it depends on what your goals are. But if you want to just develop yourself as a person and be more engaging, being more confident, and ultimately having more success, yes, I have an Instagram. It's just Taylor Burrowes. So that's one way to look at it, is just selectivity is actually really important in being a confident, commanding presence. So if you want to get better with women, your goal shouldn't be necessarily high numbers, but better quality interactions. And so and my goal is always for the purpose of a long-term monogamous relationship. When I talk to people about dating and relationships, they may be in a phase where they're dating multiple people or serially, but ultimately their goal and their value is around finding one partner. So just to clarify that for a minute, serial monogamy relationships aren't a good example for long-term. Yeah, what I was saying was intimacy erodes. So we talk sometimes about perpetual casual sexual relationships, but we don't often hear any research about serial sort of short-term relationships. And basically it's just a way of rationalizing sort of the grass is always greener on the other side. It's like when things start to get really intimate, which can be really uncomfortable, especially if you didn't have a good role model or example growing up, like with your parents or your family members, then you don't know what to do with that. You don't know how to handle conflict or disagreements or any of that level of vulnerability. And I've talked about I have no idea. I'm not angry at all. Very relaxed. I've talked about males feeling vulnerable and that not being the same thing as people assume when we talk about vulnerability in general. So vulnerability is just a level of intimacy where you're transparent, basically. So for males, it's probably more appropriate to talk about transparency, and for females, it's more appropriate to talk about vulnerability. So just generalizing that to both parties in a relationship, I just mean vulnerable in a sense that they've reached that level of emotional intimacy, yes, and transparency, that you see your imperfections and your flaws. You're not just constantly trying to present your I say this, but I don't want it to be confusing. Like, you are always practicing being the best that you can be, but you're no longer creating an image in order to win them over. It's like you always want to be earning their loyalty and their attachment. Like, you never want to get complacent, but they're going to see all of you, and the right person or a right person is going to accept that, all of you, the imperfections, the flaws, they're gonna love those too, basically. So thank you. Welcome. We've kind of gone from loneliness to general healthy relationships and dating advice. When does that happen in a relationship? The intimacy part? Well, I mean, it should start to, if you think about them in layers, they should be peeling off. I call it escalation, like emotional escalation. When you escalate emotionally, you're peeling back the layers. And so you don't want to do that too soon or prematurely. You want to make sure that you're doing it responsibly to the partner, right? So you're both kind of in a nice harmonic dynamic. There's like a synchronicity there. And there's no real, specific timeline. It depends on the context. Like myself and my partner, we were long distance for a while. So our timeline was a little bit longer because of that reason. And then once we sort of physically met and then things picked up, the pace picked up from then. And so, yes, I'm taken. So now I'm traveling together. And so there's obviously a lot of intimacy once you are living together. I have a PhD in marriage, couples, and family therapy. So basically, I'm a relationship doctor or a doctor of love, sure. I focus on love a lot and intimacy. Hello. I think it's really important to remain hopeful and optimistic about relationships and talk about what makes a healthy relationship, not just how to avoid unhealthy ones. If you fail to reach intimacy, is it an incompatibility issue or because you tried to force an outcome? It can be an incompatibility issue, absolutely. If you're not able to sort of sync up, like it's just going to feel off. And there are times in a relationship where it's not all smooth, but ultimately you're always going to want to resolve that with someone that you really care about. The attachment is there. You're not going to care that it's a little bit of friction. It's not going to push you away. Thanks. Some of these comments are funny. Sorry, I'm laughing at, am I knocked up? Nope, not yet. So, yeah, it's a matter of being honest with your partner, and it doesn't mean fully 100% honest. Like you want to, I mean, yes, honest, but not, you need a filter of some sort, right? I love the trolls. So when you expose too much to your partner, it can be a little bit of a flooding situation, if that makes sense. So you want to make sure that you you can kind of take care of yourself, whatever your thoughts and feelings are internally, you can sort through, for the most part, some of the fundamental aspects of your psychology, or little behavioral stuff. You can kind of manage on your own. You don't have to process everything with your partner. And that's more for women, right? Because men, if anything, they can be a little bit more stoic or neutral. What if you do that and don't realize it? Which part? Oh, the sharing too much? Okay, so when you are sharing too much, it's important for you to take some time and have a little time apart and away from your partner. And it doesn't have to be a lot, but you just want to have a little space in order to check in with yourself, do the things that ground you and help you self-regulate. So that could be reading, that could be journaling, that could be yoga, that could be going to the beach, it could be exercising. I don't know how long you take when you go to the gym, but when I go alone, I take kind of a long time. So it's a really great opportunity for me to just feel really at peace and take that time to be quiet and focus on me. I kind of shut everybody out when I'm doing those kinds of things. I was trying to block somebody before and I couldn't do it. Hold on, let me see if I can. Okay, let's try. Did it work? I need to have a moderator to block some of these guys. Okay. Block. Okay, there we go. That should work. Got him. You're welcome. So, filter in the sense of escalation periods. Yes. Okay. So yeah, I did see that question come through. Thank you. Filtering is like having some sort of mechanism that you don't have to share every single thought, or because women are much more neurotic than men are generally, but there are a lot of neurotic men as well. So I don't want to just focus on women being the neurotic ones. I find a lot of men lately that I've been working with have been experiencing a lot of anxiety and rumination because I think it's because they've kind of isolated themselves for the most part. They're not really engaging socially as much. And I am speaking generally, but because of that, they've sort of taken on a lot of those almost feminine features psychologically in being very anxious. And so I'm trying. It's hard to focus sometimes, but thank you. So yeah, whether you're male or female, when you're having those neurotic thoughts, you need to learn how to regulate them. You need to learn how to process them, how to center yourself and sort of get to that functional mode where you're emotionally resilient is a really great way of explaining it. So whether you're having ups or whether you're having downs, hopefully they're not too high ups and not too low downs, but you want to be able to bring yourself back to just that calm, peaceful, pleasant place where you can get what needs to be done, be able to be present. That's a really good way of knowing when you're healthy, is if you can sit with friends, sit with family, meet strangers, and be able to just engage with them and not be really distracted or restless, be on your phone. And if you can do that, then I think that's a good signal that you are in a healthy frame of mind. That someone just mentioned about male friends, that's always a really controversial, I find, topic. So if you rush your thoughts, it's a bad thing to share too much. Let me hold off on that. Send that again if I forget, sorry. So in regards to the male friends, it's important to have boundaries. Period, right? Like whether you're single, whether you're coupled, boundaries are extremely important, and you need to know what your values are. So if you're a friendly person, I'm an extremely friendly person. I'm very polite. I'm very engaging with people. So I say hi, how you doing? I ask them about their life or whatever, and I think that it's natural when you're a friendly person to do that. And there's no, sort of bad-mindedness going on, but that's not with all women, that's not with all people. But you need to learn the difference between someone who just has that really outgoing, friendly temperament and someone who is sort of hedging their bets. And that takes practice, that takes intuition, and that takes you being mature enough and having those types of boundaries to evaluate and assess whether someone is like that. So you have to own that responsibility a bit yourself. If you just sort of create that rule like across the board, you're going to be almost like handicapping yourself from learning how to tell when someone's a good, well-intentioned person and not really doing anything wrong. They're just friendly, versus someone who's, you know, kind of getting some validation on the side. They kind of want to keep that door open. They don't want to feel locked in. Like someone who's like that should be obvious to identify. So I'm glad that this is resonating with some of you. So I appreciate your feedback. Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is a little bit of that comes from an insecurity from the person. And then there are also times when the other person who's talking to other people is literally trying to get away with crossing boundaries. So you have to know the difference. If someone comes from a place of lack, they will propagate that. Yeah, insecurity. I really feel like a place of lack is scarcity is about insecurity. And when you're confident, you know what your values are and you don't lower your standards. So if someone's going to be, you know, doing things that are just literally offensive to you, not because you're sensitive, but because it's a value, there's a boundary, and they cross it more than once, you know that they disregard and don't stand for the same values. So why would you pursue and escalate that particular relationship further with that person? You shouldn't. And maybe they'll learn and maybe they won't, but that's up to them. I do understand relationships better than most things. Great, yes, that's good. Most people don't. People are generally unaware when they are in a mental state of scarcity, yes. It comes from a lot of different things, just that general, I mean, we can call it restlessness, we can call it unhappiness, discontent, lack of fulfillment, just mentally not, it's not like you're mentally ill, but you're not mentally optimized. You're not mentally really healthy. So good to meet you too. Come back anytime. I appreciate your comments. You know, if you look at it on a scale of mental illness to mental health, thinking about someone who's at the other end of mental health being really enthusiastic and expansive and confident, you know, it'll look different for a man and a woman. But most people are in the middle somewhere, right? So they're not completely pathological, but they're not completely healthy either. And so you have to determine where you want to be and where would you put yourself right now between like 0 and 100, let's say. So if 0 is mentally ill and being pathological, then you know, maybe you're at a 60% on the mental health scale. So working towards maybe not 100, but you want to strive for that and then hopefully fall somewhere in between. So let me look at what that comment was. It seemed like an interesting one. I have a history of finding myself with a very similar type of guy, controlling, possessive. So my question would be, do you like that about yourself? Do you like being controlling or possessive? I'm not clear on whether you do from that comment. So, is it bad to share too much? If the goal is genuine connection, I feel disingenuous filtering that. So honesty is different from sort of not flooding the person. That's the only thing I like to compare it to, is that flooding aspect when you sort of gives way too much to a person too soon, then it can be like flooding them. I talk about this concept of comfort and tension. The last video that I did that's pinned on my Twitter profile is attention versus tension. And so I would say saying too much too soon is about comfort. You're really looking for validation, and that can come across as too needy. So if you're not able to meet your own needs, it's communicated by that behavior, and then that person is going to feel a little bit smothered, and so it floods them with too much too soon. Finding a soulmate. Okay, there's lots coming through. Let's follow up with Mocha Latte. Sorry, what I meant was that my partner seemed to have such similar traits, or maybe I just attracted. So your previous partners are controlling, have been controlling and possessive, not similar to you. Okay, I got you. Well, yes, I would say you're probably attracting that or just tolerating it and accepting that on some level, right? So we would need to figure out what's going on with you in that regard. Why is it that you sort of accept that behavior? I would definitely come up with maybe some ways for you to process your previous relationships and say, what did I learn from that situation? Because to go on to the next relationship before you've processed the mistakes, the failures, the unhealthy patterns, or whatever that was negative in the previous relationship, you're really just carrying baggage into the next relationship, right? And so that's on you. That's your responsibility. And I mean, obviously, whatever, sorry, my phone is like dropping. Whatever their abuse or whatever their negative behavior is also their responsibility. But you have to take your piece of the responsibility as well. Oh, good. I was a little bit distracted with my falling phone. But you can follow up with me if you like. A 15-minute discovery call might do you well, Mocha Latte. You can go on my website link on my profile and just go ahead and request that, and we can talk one-on-one. You're welcome. Okay. Sometimes women equate possessiveness and control as being needed. Red flag. Ah, yes. So like being loved, like being chosen. But yes, I think there's a difference between having a strong frame when the man, sort of is a little bit more aggressive, and I don't mean aggressive in a physically way, but he's a little bit more confident in that sense. Like he kind of states what he wants, and it's not to the point of controlling, because you're not punished if you don't fall in line, but he just has that personality where he's very sort of blatant, right? He'll just sort of state things. And so once you start to peel back those layers of intimacy, you should see that soften a bit. And if you don't, and if you feel that there are negative consequences for you because you just don't do what he wants, then that's a red flag. So there's going to be a difference between the way that he sort of engages with life, because maybe he's been alone for a long time, or just sort of been really successful and been able to bark orders at people, but he like it's all bark. There's no consequence to those things not working out. So I would say watch how they handle when they face disappointment or rejection, or how do they resolve conflict? What do they do? How do they fight with you? And I don't mean physically fight, but how do they argue? How do they have disagreements? Do they compromise? What are those behaviors as well? So you want to balance any of the overly arrogant or confident behaviors with how they cooperate. So you might see that they have a lot of those as well, and then you recognize that they're not actually controlling or possessive. They're just very direct. And so directness and confidence is not a bad thing. But that was a great comment there, ladies. Thank you. How do you tell if you're flooding someone? Do you think your parents or personal relationships? Yes, absolutely. You form your ideas of love very, very early on. And so if you weren't communicating love with your parents, if they weren't communicating love to you, and it's by action, not necessarily just verbally, then you're going to lack those skills as an adult. So very important for you to address those in therapy, coaching, in your relationships. You need to be able to exercise that intimacy muscle, you know? Like if you're not growing with every relationship, and hopefully you don't have to go through too many in order to grow in that way, you might, really sort of fail in one relationship and then learn so much that the next relationship just makes sense and it clicks because you've picked an ideal partner, but you have challenged yourself to push through those difficult layers of intimacy. I think most people love problems come from their parents. Hi, Alaska. I am in Vietnam, so hello from Vietnam. Yes, a lot of people are familiar with the attachment dynamics, right? Like you want to have a secure attachment with your family and also with your partner. Thank you. And how well they handle finding balance. Yes. Yes. All right. Any other questions? I'm reading the comments and tapping the screen too much. I need to be doing some more videos, so it's hard when I'm moving about every week or so to kind of get settled, but I'm practicing. So this is new for me as well, traveling and living on the go. So I hope that you stay patient with me as I try to continue having a schedule of content. But if you ever just want to reach out and say hello or ask me a question, the best way to communicate with me, honestly, is through my email newsletter. I'm in Da Nang. We got here late Sunday night. It was like 12:30 a.m. Monday morning. Bali is coming up soon. Thailand is next, the next country. But yeah, if you're not on my newsletter, get on the newsletter, and you can always reply to me there, and we can have more of a discussion on the topics I go into in depth on my newsletter. I'm not really worried about how many people are on my newsletter as much as who's on my newsletter. I want the right people on my newsletter, and I try to, be a little bit more like these periscopes, like get into more depth and have more engagement and give you a little bit more insight into who I am and what I do and how I do what I do. But also I want to give you some benefits to speaking with me on my newsletter. So I'm going to start rolling out a little bit more, just benefits for the newsletter members and subscribers and clients. It's not on my profile. You know what? The best way to do is the link on my Twitter profile goes straight to my ideal relationship tips. And when you request that, you'll get onto my newsletter. Yeah. If you're on Twitter, the bio has links in it. There's a link to subscribe to my YouTube channel and a link to my website to request my 15 ideal relationship tips. I don't know how to do that, but if you know, you can always give me the rundown and maybe I can try. Ah, very cool. Yes. So, okay, I don't know how to do the link, but basically if you want to, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. The link for my newsletter is bit.ly, if you know bit.ly's, bit.ly/DTB list 15. So if you got that, someone can write it in. Can I write a comment? I think I can. Here, let me try. I feel like a novice. bit.ly/ taking a very long time, sorry. DBT list 15. Okay, I think that worked. Yes, perfect. So there was a question, there was a question that came in about medication, but that's not necessarily something that I talk about. I'm not a medical doctor, so I definitely don't encourage or prescribe medication. So you're welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me, and I will talk to you soon. Ciao. Yes, go ahead and DM me if you have any more questions. Happy to try to answer them there.